I guess let me start with the primary question that I'm asking, which is about NATO, because Ukraine has this sort of, I don't have the term in front of me, like aspiring country. It's not technically a member of NATO. So what is the United States' responsibility to do anything if Russia invades?
Well, we don't have an obligation like the one that we have to NATO allies. Ukraine is a partner. It is an aspirant country, but it doesn't even have what is called a membership action plan. So it's not on the direct path to membership in NATO. So we do not have an obligation like we have with NATO allies to defend Ukraine. And that's an important point. It's a point that is made all the time by President Biden and others in various ways in order to make clear that we have defense obligations. We have a treaty obligation to allies. We do not have that with Ukraine.
So then why would the United States make, maybe they won't, but why might they make any sort of, take any military action in this regard?
Well, we will support our allies. So the main thing that we have done so far in terms of military action is to reinforce the position of our allies, the frontline allies, by sending troops and continuing on a path that we've been on since 2014, which is called reassurance. So we are doing more and more to make our frontline allies feel confident that we are behind them in terms of defense. What we are doing with Ukraine is sending more and more lethal assistance. So we are sending more weapons to Ukraine, but that is not at all the same as sending troops or actually posting American forces in Ukraine.
Yeah, of course, then it would get more thorny if Putin does invade. If you play that out, then what is the U.S. obligated to do, or what do you think the U.S. might do? And are those two different things?
Yes, they're very different things. I think we need to do what is in our national interest and what is right. So this is an outrageous violation already of international law and on the scheme of international relations, especially in Europe, since the end of the Cold War. So we need to react very, very firmly, and we're already doing that. We have, I think, approved, the president announced earlier today, a first tranche of anti-Russia sanctions for the action that Putin and the Russians have taken with regard to these separatist regions, Luhansk and Donetsk. He's holding some back, but we have a lot of economic sanctions that we could impose. We could also provide additional lethal assistance to the Ukrainian armed forces. I don't think that is going to be the focus. I think economic sanctions will be the focus. And in that, we're acting in concert with our allies, especially the United Kingdom and the European Union.
My last question, and this is just speculation, of course, but let's say that Putin ignores all of this or has the support from the oligarchs or whatever, and he actually moves forward into not just, Russia-controlled Ukraine, but Kiev. What do you think would happen? What would the United States do?
That would be a new situation. I think we would implement all of these economic sanctions under those circumstances. That's certainly what the president and others have been saying. So that would mean trying to exclude Russia from the SWIFT system of clearing dollar transactions, which is an extremely harsh sanction. We've already seen serious sanctions be applied. So the end of the Nord Stream 2 pipeline for the foreseeable future has been declared by the German government. I do not believe, however, that we would want, even under those extreme circumstances, to directly confront militarily Russia because of the risk of escalation. Russia has a tactical, or you might say an operational advantage in that locale, in Ukraine. They can prevail militarily. They can prevail probably even if the United States were to become more deeply involved militarily. That's one reason why countries don't want Ukraine in NATO, because we cannot defend Ukraine from Russia. So the risk of escalation in that sense would be very, very high. And we are talking about a country, Russia, where the high end of escalation is nuclear war. So we have got to proceed with a lot of caution with regard to direct military engagement. I don't think that's what we would choose. We would try to find more and more non-military inducements to get Russia to change its behavior.